Hey, what's going on, everyone? Today we have the meta snapshot for patch 15.4b, and normally I don't always make B patch updates, but this week it's super duper important because there's like an absolutely astronomically sized patch that we have to go over because all the good comps, all the S tier comps, former S tiers, a lot of them are in the B tier. And then the new comps in the S tier, like Mighty Mech, no one was playing Karma before, right? Like, Karma's really good now because she got a 5 mana buff, and we'll be covering how to play each and every one of these comps. If you want to follow along, go on to bunnymuffins.lol/meta, and let's just get right into it. In the S tier, we have Mighty Mech and Soul Fighter Viego. Viego's still a very good 3-cost reroll comp. With Soul Fighter, I think that's the best version. Some people are doing it with Duelist, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I think Soul Fighter is the best version. After that, we have Duelist Ashe and Colossal Udyr. This comp is back. I wouldn't say it's as good as it was before, but it definitely is still forceable from like a Pandora's item start, or maybe even some more spots other than that. After that, you have regular Soul Fighter, still very strong. Soul Fighter in general, pretty good right now. Fast 9 is back. If you ever get the chance to get a ton of gold in the early game, or maybe you have like Golden Edge Gnar or something like that, then you want to go for the Fast 9. Star Guardian, still a very good vertical. Crystal Gambit, I mean, if you hit, you hit. Fusion Dance Darius. This is one of the reroll comps that kind of survives still, so this one's still very viable. After that, we have Tiny Team, still very good. Duelist Reroll, as we talked about before, and then Protector Sniper Reroll to round out the A tier. In the B tier, we have Kayle Reroll, Mentor Ryze, Jhin Reroll, Fanservice Xayah, Sorcerers, Jinx Volley, Juggernaut Ashe, Protector Kog'Maw, Sniper Wraith, a bunch of other comps. Like at the bottom, we have like Katarina and Malzahar heavyweights. We also removed Mentor Katarina because you can't get that power up anymore. So yeah, the C tier, we have a bunch of other comps like Tysa rerolled, Caitlyn, Jayce. When one reroll comp gets nerfed, the other ones generally take a hit. That's kind of how TFT works. So that's why you see when like 3 reroll comps are viable, all the like secondary comps are like gonna be A tier. But when a lot of the reroll comps are not viable, all the secondary reroll comps, like the ones that were not the best ones that were just following along, they generally drop a lot. So that's why you see a lot of rerolls down in the B and C tier. It's just because of how unit pools work in TFT. But let's get right into how to play each and every one of the comps. We're going to be focusing on the S and A tiers this week because, I mean, it's just going to be the most important to learn about because that's what you're going to be playing in probably like 19 out of 20 games. People like to say, oh, can I 20-20 something, which means playing the same comp 20 times in a row. But I don't recommend doing that. You can do it. It's possible. I do have like a comps to one trick section over here, which you can try out, but it's best to maybe split the whole S and A tier in maybe like 15 to 20 of your 20 games that you're going to play. So let's start off with Mighty Mech. Mighty Mech is pretty solid overall. You just run 7 Mighty Mech, pretty standard, but you build AP and AD items if you can. Tank items are a little bit weird in this comp because normally when we build tank items, we think of Warmogs, Bramble Vest, Dragon Claw, Steadfast Heart, things like that. But Jarvan, he's not really like a main tank. He's kind of like a utility tank. So that's why we run Protector's Vow, Adaptive Helm, and maybe a utility item on him. In this case, we have Even Shroud, but it could be the other ones. Or another mana item. He's really good with that because you just really want him to cast early and often. For Yone, he's going to be the secondary carry. You want him with IE, Edge of Night, and Hand of Justice. Nothing too complicated there. He's kind of like a melee user. There's a bunch of different builds that work on him. There's like Rage Blade builds. There's like attack speed focus builds you could try out. There are more bruiserish versions you can do too with like Sterex. Honestly, all of them work. Like you don't really prioritize Yone items that hard until you get him because he's a legendary unit. So what you should be focusing on instead is building your Karma items. She's gonna want blue buff. Blue buff got changed recently where it gives bonus ability power based on how much ability power you have. So that's why you like building Rabadon Seth Cap with her with the blue buff. And then Jeweled Gauntlet is a pretty solid item because you need her to critically strike. So lastly, you want utility items on something like a Senna. She's not too bad at applying it because she has a small area of effect ability where she hits a lot of people on the board at one time whenever she casts her spell. But obviously you could drop it on Xayah. Anyone who deals AoE damage, you could use it on them. For the non-mech units, you want to be adding in Ryze. Ryze is good because he gives Executioner and Strategist, and also the Mentor buff, which gives mana to your whole team. So obviously, you don't care that much about Executioner because it's buffing up Senna. Senna is cool and all, but she's not like mandatory. She's not going to be one of your primary carries. You don't even use your fruit on her. But Strategist is pretty good. That's mainly why you run him. Whenever you run Jarvan, you're probably running Ryze, unless you're playing something really weird. But the strategist buff is nice. You put Ryze in the front because you just use him as an extra tank because you don't really care about what he does. And then the other non-mech unit you run is going to be Xayah. Xayah is just a very good support legendary, so that's why you play her, and she's just a solid +1. So if you're ever level 8 and never reach level 9, just play this board without Xayah. So the way to play this comp is to get a strong Mighty Mech opener that's mainly going to be built around Lucian and Aatrox plus whoever else you can find. Once you do that, you use Lucian as your item holder. He can easily hold blue buff, jeweled gauntlet, or hat that you build for Karma, or any other AP items that you build for her. Like, she doesn't absolutely need these specific items. And then get some sort of fruit that allows him to deal more damage. You could do something like Pursuit. You could do something like Keen Eye. There are a lot of different options you could use on Lucian. Midas Touch also works. Any of the generic damage ones work on him in the beginning. But another thing that helps out with this comp is a good source of economy, such as wind streaking or a portal or augment that helps you with econ. That helps you hit your level 8 much more easily, especially since this comp will be contested. If you are contested, having one econ augment helps a ton in hitting before your opponents do. There's a delicate balance in the game between econ versus combat augments. Essentially, if two people are going the Karma comp and one person has econ and other person has a combat augment, during the stage 4 roll down, the person with the econ augment probably is going to hit 2-star of the 4 costs, whereas the one with the combat augment is going to hit the 1-star. At that point in the game, the 2-star is stronger, but then once the combat person eventually 2-stars their units, then the combat person's gonna win. But then later on, the econ person's gonna hit level 9, and then the econ person has the advantage. And then after that, the combat person hits level 9, and so on and so forth. So there's this weird back and forth that kind of happens when two people are contesting each other, but it's much safer to play with the econ augment because you could get top 4s, but it might be more difficult to win, but you're not really too concerned about that. I'd rather get at least a 4th than risking going 8th. Lastly, this comp becomes much stronger if you have a way to find Yone, as this comp spikes really hard with 7 mech, because, well, that's just how this comp is kind of built out. It's just a super important part of the comp. For power-ups, you want to power up your Yone and Karma. Obviously, Karma's going to come first, like you do Karma and Jarvan first, and then once you get Yone, you could swap it onto Yone. But for Karma, you want Efficient, Mage, or Shadow Clone. Those are going to be the main go-tos. I think Efficient probably going to be the best one. For Jarvan, Mana Rush is really funny because he just casts right away, and then round 2, pretty solid because he's not that tanky, so getting something like Selfish or like Regenerative aren't as effective on him or any of the other generic tank ones because he's just not a mega tank, he's a utility tank. And then on Yone, Thrill Seeker, Final Boss, Tiny Terror, all viable options. There are many more you can choose. You don't have to use these specific power-ups that I list out up here. You just have to make sure it fits your item build and it fits whatever you have on your board, or you could use it to counter opponents. For example, some comps really like running a super tank, so you might take like Tankzilla on them, or you might take Standalone on them, or something, anything that gives them a lot of tank stats. But if you're facing a melee carry, you might want Unstoppable instead, even though you normally take a super tank power-up. So always tailor your power-ups to whatever you have in the game or whatever you're facing in the game or whatever build you're using. Like if you don't have a Void Staff, Keen Eye is pretty good on Karma because that's a way to get magic penetration. So standard fruit rules still apply with this comp. For augments, you want to go for the Mighty Mech Exodia in some cases. If you're ever on Golden Gala, getting the arm, leg, and head augments are really good because you're able to get the Mighty Mech Prismatic. It's a little hard to do because you need to get to a really high level and also not die before then, but it is something worth going for. Apart from that, like any econ that we talked about before is really good at the beginning of the game. But essentially this comp works out really well because everything else got nerfed and Karma got a 5 mana buff, which is huge for her. It's essentially getting efficient on her without needing the power up. So that's why this comp is really good right now. Everything else just got like super nerfed and then Karma got a buff. Next comp up we have is Soul Fighter Viego. This comp is super good if you get artifacts. But obviously you just play this with a bunch of soul fighters. Like you try to get to 8, but it's kind of hard because doing 3-cost reroll, it makes it very difficult to get to Gwen because Gwen's a legendary unit and you spend so much gold on level 7 trying to get Viego 3-star that sometimes you don't end up getting to the Gwen. But pretty much Jeweled Gauntlet plus some survivability items are really good on Viego. Honestly, a lot of different Viego builds work. We could check out the Explorer tool down here, teamfight.lol for all data checking needs. And we could just check it out here. We could go to traits, we could go to 6 or 8 Soul Fighter. We could put both of them in actually by pressing it like that. And then we could go on over to his items. You'll see here that like there's Edge of Night, Rage Blade, Jeweled Gauntlet, Hand of Justice. All these work out really fine. But one thing you may notice already is that artifacts are super good on him. Like we see a bunch of them popping up here, and you want to build those because they're just really good. But as long as you have like at least one survivability item plus Jeweled Gauntlet, the third item doesn't really matter too much. But it does also depend on what power up you have. If you have stretchy arms, I really like having Quicksilver on him because it just gives him a lot of uptime. He'll just never stop attacking the whole fight. But if you can't get Quicksilver, then obviously you at least need an Edge of Night so that he survives a little bit. But for artifacts, Sniper's Focus, Wit's End, Static Shiv, Flicker Blade, Zonias are all viable options. Rapid Fire Cannon also pretty decent. And then you could also reroll for Xin Zhao 3-star as well as you are doing the Viego. It's because you just need a tank, but if you're not able to get Xin Zhao, then you can make Set your tank. That definitely can be possible there. And then give Xin Zhao or Set any of the generic tank power-ups. I don't really think you have to be too strict on this one. But yeah, just do level 7 reroll for this comp. That involves stabilizing somehow in stage 3 early on, or doing a full lose streak until stage 3-5 and then hitting level 7 and rolling for Viego at 3-5. Econ back up, get to 50 gold, and then slow roll and finish him off. Once you're at around like 7 copies of Viego, you can roll past 50 in a lot of cases. You could go down to like 30 or even 20 or even 10 gold depending on your health total in order to try to find your Viego 3-star. One thing to note about this comp is that in the previous comp I talked about like how to play contested. Well, with Viego you do not want to be contested. So if someone is contesting you, if you have a better spot than them, such as having better items, more Viegos, or you have like an insane reroll augment or an insane artifact for him, do not pivot. But if the other person has a better spot than you, then you might want to look into playing something else. It would depend on what item you slammed early. If you slammed a Jeweled Gauntlet early, you could go into any AP comp. And then if you slammed one of the other items such as like Edge of Night, Hand of Justice, Quicksilver, or things like that, you just pivot into a different melee carry comp. I won't lie, the other melee carry comps are going to be a bit more difficult to find, but it is still possible. Next comp up we have is Duelist Ashe. Oh yeah, and if you slammed Rage Blade, you could go into this comp, which is the Ashe comp. Nothing's changed about this build, oddly enough. Like you just play with the Udyr and Ashe. As long as you get 3 bows, you're chilling because you need Rage Blade, Kraken Slayer, and Titan's Resolve. And then Udyr, he's pretty strict with his items. You want the Stone Plate and the Sterix Gauge. If you do get artifacts, you can make them work. Mogul's Mail is incredible on Udyr. It's probably his best item because you get infinite gold, which allows you to automatically hit your team comp no matter what. For Ashe, Flicker Blade is incredible, even after the nerfs. But I wouldn't really say that artifact items are like the end-all be-all for this comp. It's mainly just getting the exact regular items. So that's why Pandora's items, as you can see on the augments here on the right-hand side, is super duper important. It's not mandatory, but if you have the game and you start off with no bows, like I'd probably avoid this comp. But if you have 1 bow and you're not too contested, then you could definitely get away with not having Pandora's items as long as you can hit enough bows eventually. One question one viewer asked in last week's video is, when do I switch the fruit onto Lee Sin? So normally you play this comp with Colossal Udyr, and that's mandatory. That's the power up that's required. And then on Ashe, she can use a bunch of different things, but Bullet Hell, Double Strike, and Shadow Clone are generally considered the most usable ones. But when do you want double Colossal for Lee Sin? So if you have a bunch of power up rerolls, I'd say like at least 2 of them, you can consider switching your fruit from Ashe onto Lee Sin so that you get 2 Colossal units in Udyr and Lee Sin. So when do you do that? If you have Lee Sin 2-star and he has 3 items, that's the best time to do it. I wouldn't really do it any other time because Ashe definitely is a very strong carry on her own, and you do run the risk of not hitting the second Colossal all the time because I don't think it automatically comes up. It's weird. For fan service automatically comes up, or for some of the other ones such as Stormbender, Colossal, and other power-ups like that, they don't automatically show up even if you have the first one, so that's why it can be a little risky to use. But the comp is very strong still, very consistent, great for farming out force, not the best for winning. If you want to win, you want to play something like a Fast 9, which we'll get into in just a bit. But next comp up we have is going to be Soul Fighter Samira Gwen. Soul Fighter is just really good in general right now. The trait is just very powerful, and you leave the option open of like going the Viego reroll build if you hit him, and if not, you just go into a Samira Set and Gwen carry. So I think the most important thing to have when playing Soul Fighters is to have combat augments. Generally, when I'm playing a vertical trait, I love combat augments more so than econ augments. And the reason why is because in stuff like Soul Fighter or Star Guardian, every unit benefits greatly from the trait buff and also the combat augment buff. And combat augments generally hit a lot of different people. So if you ever have something like Climb the Ladder or even any of like the generic damage or tank augments, these comps such as Soul Fighter and Star Guardian become a lot better because your units can actually make use of the buff. Contrast that to something like Mighty Mech, where all the power of your trait goes into the mech. Like, you don't really care that much about the other combat augments, which is why you want econ on this one instead. So every comp has little special exceptions, and for Soul Fighter, you'd really like combat augments. So if you get like maybe a 3 Soul Fighter start at the start of the game, I know that isn't like a real trait, it's a 2, 4, 6, 8, but having 3 allows you to get to 4 very easily because you have something like Naafiri, Kalista, and Xin Zhao, let's say. It's easy to get to the 4th one because you just need either Viego or Lux. So when you do hit level 4, you're able to switch into the 4 Soul Fighter trait breakpoint and ideally snowball your early game from there, maybe get like a 5-game win streak, or maybe go 4-1 in the early game, which isn't too bad. But in the early game, I like using Kalista as my item holder for Samira. They use very similar items, like the Spear of Shojin's pretty nice, and then you could do like, if you don't have Executioner, IE is still good on her. And then you just run whatever frontline you can. Like, generally, I'm going to be playing Juggernauts with Naafiri, because Naafiri is often 2-starred, so I like playing around with my 2-stars. So if you add something like a Mundo or like an Aatrox, this can work out pretty decently. Once you get more to the mid game, you want to be playing like 6 Soul Fighter, and then in the late game, eventually 8. It really just depends on if you hit Gwen or if you get an Emblem. Emblem is actually really strong. You can put it on anyone. Yone and Braum are probably going to be my favorite because you definitely do need Edgelord in this comp. It makes Samira a lot stronger. And then Braum and Yone are pretty good because, well, obviously they are just legendaries. If you don't get either of these, you could play something like a Volibear. Volibear is a good replacement until you get these because he is a edgelord, and he could also hold items pretty decently for Yone. But this is a very easy comp to play, just one of those vertical trait comps. Nothing really too complicated going on there. Next build up we have is Fast 9 Varus. Very tricky comp to play, but you will end up winning a lot of games if you execute this correctly from the right spots, because going level 9 and getting 2-star legendary units, like, I mean, that's kind of like the point of TFT, right? We're trying to reach the highest cap of our board, and fast 9ing is one way to get there. The only caveat is that you need a ton of gold in order to do that, because you need to both hit level 9. I think going from level 8 to level 9 is what, like 72 gold or something like that? And then you need a lot of gold to roll down for 2-star legendaries. So each 2-star legendary costs 15 gold. So Braum, TF, and Varus, if you get them all 2-star, that costs 45 gold already. That's assuming you don't have to roll to hit them. So in order to hit all 3 of these 2-star, you probably need like 125 gold, something like that, right? But obviously you don't need all 3 of them 2-star, you just need some of them. Backliners being more important in Twisted Fate and Varus, but it really depends on what items you have. But if you ever get a big econ in the early game, and that's done through having Gnar with Golden Edge, you are going to be more than golden. Just drop a Rage Blade on him and prioritize it as your first item, and he's going to farm you like a ton of gold. You eventually switch the Rage Blade onto your Twisted Fate, and then you do like a Shojin IE build on Varus. Third item doesn't really matter. And then you run like Cassante as your main tank. For power-ups, Doom Barrage is going to be the best for Varus, and then like Shadow Clone is another option you can have. Honestly, he can use a lot of different stuff, but like you normally always get Doom Barrage. Like I've had very few games where I don't get this after I re-roll the fruit on him, maybe like 2 or 3 times. And then if you don't have any penetration for physical damage, get Sky Piercer on Twisted Fate. You could also take it on Varus, but I prefer doing it on Twisted Fate, assuming both Twisted Fate and Varus are 2-star. If they are not 2-star, you definitely want the fruit on Cassante, or at least one of them on Cassante, because you need some tankiness in this build, and you need to delay for Varus to eventually kill everyone. Definitely take econ augments when you play this. If you ever get Shimmer Scale Essence, that's going to be the best one to get. That's the prismatic augment where you get Mogul's Mail and also Gambler's Blade. It just farms you infinite gold and makes it really easy to fast 9. But honestly, any econ works, and yeah, you just need a ton of gold to both hit level 9 and roll down for the units. You generally hit level 9 around stage 4, 5, or 5-1, sometimes even 5-2 if you're healthy. It really just depends on your health total. If you're really desperate, like obviously you have to do it a bit earlier. If you're playing on something like Scuttle Puddle, it's much easier to hit it earlier, but always judge it based off of your health, and be careful to just not go 8th, because that's the one danger when playing this comp. It's a very hit or miss comp, because you could get to level 9, do your roll down, and then be stuck with like a full 1-star board, in which case, even if you hit all the units that you care about, you still might lose because everything is 1-star. So just be careful when you're kind of dealing with that. But if you play the early game correctly, such as getting a Gnar 2 with Golden Edge, you should be winning a bunch of rounds at the start, especially if you have a Dr. Mundo to complement him with, because that gives you a decent front line and also gives you a bunch of attack damage to your Gnar. And I've seen Gnar 2-star carry through stage 3, even though he's a 1-cost unit. Like, obviously, you're going to lose some rounds. You're not going to be, like, perfect streaking, 100 health. But you might go, like, 3-2 during stage 3, or sometimes even 4-1. Next build up we have is going to be the Star Guardian comp. I really like playing Star Guardians because they're really easy to play. It's kind of therapeutic in a way, but nothing too much has changed about this build. You just want to get a lot of items for this comp and also ideally a Star Guardian emblem. So if you get a lot of items, it's really good because a lot of these units actually make use of items. You could itemize Jinx and Poppy as your main 2 people. You could itemize a person with the emblem. You can itemize Nico with random tank items if you have extras. Ahri if you have AP items. Seraphine can take pretty much anything. Syndra can also take AP items. There's like a lot you can do with this comp. So definitely go for a lot of items when you play this. That's why quality over quantity is one of the best augments in the game for this, if not the best. Honestly, I think I'd take quality over quantity over Star Guardian Crown at the start if I know I'm hard forcing this comp. Just make sure when you take it, you slam items early and often so that you get to win streak with this build. But for Poppy really likes either regenerative or best defense. Sometimes I take unstoppable based on matchup if I'm against a lot of melee carries in the game. Jinx, her best one is going to be Sky Piercer because it saves you a lot of item slots. It'll avoid having to build Last Whisper or Void Staff, so that's a really good item on her. But if you do have Shred already, because sometimes you just slam items early on in the game, Hyperactive is going to be the choice for Jinx. If you get Seraphine 2-star, definitely get Mage on her because she will be 2-tapping a lot of units with that build. And fun fact, she's also a great user of Thieves Glove because she scales from every single stat in the game. If you want to learn more about how to play this comp, check out this gameplay video I have on the channel or on the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta, because in that video I cover pretty much everything you need to know about this comp, more so than any write-up can do. Next one up we have is going to be Crystal Gambit. We don't need to talk about this comp too much. I mean, if you get a Crystal Gambit emblem, just go for 7 Crystal Gambit as soon as possible, or for 5 Crystal Gambit first, win rounds, and then get to 7 once you get Xayah. Slam items once you hit 5 Crystal Gambit because you're trying to win every single round that you can. And then play a board that's similar to this. You just run 7 Crystal Gambit. Casante's pretty good because you get Protector with him and Janna. He also matches up with Varus if you ever get him in the late game. Ram is pretty good because he is a Bastion and he makes great use of the health that you get from the emblem. And then Jarvan's pretty good because you're running Strategist as well with the Janna. But yeah, this comp you might play every 1 out of 20 games, so I won't go too deep into this. It's really just getting the Crystal Gambit emblem. It's best when you get it accidentally rather than hard forcing it from the start. Another thing that's really important is having Rageblade and Guinsoo's on Ashe, but apart from that, you don't really need to worry about too much about this comp. Next build up we have is Fusion Dance Darius. This is one of the 3-cost rerolls that still survived, along with the Viego build. And this one's really fun because you get a ginormous Darius with Fusion Dance. You essentially get Darius 3, Jayce 3, and then you fruit Jayce with Classy so that he gets even more HP and stats because Heavyweights gives you a ton of stats. And then Darius eats him with the Fusion Dance, which makes him even bigger. And then he just ideally 1v9s a whole game. And then you run a bunch of Heavyweights and Supreme Cells in order to buff him up as much as possible. We're showing, I believe, 7 units here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you have extra space, assuming you're able to hit both 3-star Darius and Jayce and are able to level up after that, doesn't happen that often, but sometimes it does. Add in either more Supreme Cells or add in something like a Xayah, because she's just able to help your team a little bit more. But really fun comp to play. Darius items, i.e. Hand of Justice, Sterix Gauge is really good. Sterix Gauge works doubly well on Heavyweights because it scales off of health, so that's why it's pretty much like one of his best items. And if you ever get artifacts, this makes this comp even more crazy. If you get Prowler's Claw at the start of the game or Spectral Cutlass, you can think about hard forcing this comp. Even if you have 0 Dariuses, as long as you're uncontested, you should be fine. But some other options are going to be Death Defiance, Titanic Hydra, and Infinity Force. What I like about this comp compared to other reroll comps is that you don't need one of the scaling power-ups such as like over 9,000 or like Trickster or things like that, because you're going Fusion Dance, and you can get Fusion Dance, I think, at any time, I believe. I don't think there are any restrictions on Fusion Dance, so that means you could keep fishing for it even in the late game or even like in the mid game, because sometimes when I'm playing a certain comp and I really want something like over 9,000, but it's already like stage 3, it's like I don't want it anymore at that point in the game, right? So that's what I kind of like about this comp over some of the other ones. But really fun comp to play. Definitely get some reroll augments if you can, because it makes the comp a lot more affordable. And artifact items are going to help out a ton. Radiant items too. But next build up we have is going to be Tiny Team. If you get the Tiny Team augment, you could play something like this, where you go for Jinx, Xayah, and Poppy as your 3 Star Guardians, because you're only allowed to run 3 or fewer. And then pair it up with 4 Wraith, because they just share every trait possible. Like, you get Sniper from Jhin and Varus, you get Protector from K'Sante. Well, technically K'Sante works with Janna, and then Zac is a heavyweight with Poppy. After that, since you're running Strategist, you might as well throw in a Jarvan. Why not? Because you do lack a bunch of tanks in this team comp, so adding in him over something like Ryze is definitely preferred as your extra Strategist. And then you could throw leftover mana items onto him as well. So in your backline, you want to focus on Jinx items the most. Kraken Slayer, IE are the 2 core items. Third item I don't think matters that much. On Poppy, you want to run 3 tank items, and then obviously the mana items onto Jarvan. If you ever get a Thieves Gloves, you could drop that on K'Sante. He's a pretty good user of that, but I don't think it's like that necessary of something to build, especially since you won't have too many items, because one of your augments is going to be the Combat Augment Tiny Team. But this build's pretty good. Obviously, you need one specific augment, so we won't spend too much time here. Next comp up we have is Duelist Reroll. Duelist Reroll is pretty solid because you play it with Rammus as your tank, and you still could go for the Viego 3-star. Rammus as a tank is pretty solid. This build gives more attack speed to Viego, so you do not need something like a Rage Blade, and you could focus more on the survivability aspect of him instead. Rammus 3-star is also more tanky than something like a Set or a Xin Zhao, so that's another difference there. If you are wondering when you should decide to go for the Soul Fighter build or the Duelist build, is pretty much by looking at your augments and also doing a Rammus check. Whenever I say a check, it means like if you have them early on. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you have like a over 9,000 check. That just means if you happen to get over 9,000 that game, you're able to go for like some scaling comp. But a Lulu check or Rammus check is just whether you get him early, so you could start stacking up his stacks, and that's going to help you out a ton. And it would definitely point me towards a game where I go for the Duelist build instead of the Soul Fighter build. Another thing you want to keep in mind when playing this is if you ever get something like Pandora's Bench, this comp becomes a lot better than the Soul Fighter build, because you're rolling for 3 different 3-cost units, whereas the Viego reroll in Soul Fighters, they're only rolling for 1 of them. So something like Pandora's Bench or Rig Shop is not as effective in this build as the other one. I mean, I guess Udyr counts, but 3-starring Udyr in the Soul Fighter build literally does nothing. He's just there to give you a Duelist. So if you ever get a lot of reroll augments, or maybe you got like Keepers is really good for this build. You want to play the Duelist version over the Soul Fighter version. But Rammus is going to hold the utility tank items plus a random 3rd tank item. Ashe in the back is going to use a classic Rage Blade Kraken Slayer, and then who cares about the 3rd item combo. Viego is just survivability plus Jeweled Gauntlet plus 3rd item, and then Udyr can kind of use whatever. I do wonder if there is a world where you can play this Viego reroll build with a Colossal Udyr, but it's probably a bit difficult to get all those different items. Obviously, you would take out Rammus for that. And you probably definitely need stretchy arms, and no other option works. Well, I mean, like, Viego just works really well with stretchy arms in general, so you might need it anyways. But again, play this comp when you find an early Rammus, and it pretty much just complements Viego a lot throughout the game. Also, Duelists just aren't that tanky apart from Udyr, so having Rammus as like your random tank is really nice, just because he's also a 3-cost unit. Next build up we have is going to be Protector Sniper reroll. This comp is still good. I know Malphite got nerfed recently, but he's honestly still very solid. I love this build because it's like decently easy to play. I used to think it was hard to play, but I changed my mind on it. I think it's very easy to play because you just play the crew units. If you start the game with like 2 Malphites or 2 Sivers, you could just hard force it if no one else is going crew. And you pretty much always hit. I'm not going to say you always do. I'm going to say pretty much always hit, because there's always those one random games where like you don't hit. But if you have any semblance of Malphite items or Jhin items, I would go for this comp and just hard force it if no one else is contesting you, and if you have at least 2 Malphites or 2 Sivers, because it really is that easy to play, and you'll get a lot of top 4s, and this comp is also capable of winning sometimes. Because in the late game, you have a lot of different item users you could use with those extra items that you get from the Carousel and the neutral minions, because 3-star Sivir is solid, 2-star Jinx is solid, and in the super late game, you can even fit a Varus in here. But 4 Protector is going to round out this comp with 4 Sniper, pretty standard. Like, never manually level up early on, always use your rolls to level up until you hit 3-star Malphite, 3-star Jhin, and 3-star Sivir. Kennen's not that important, but once you 3-star everything, save up gold and then manually level to add more units in over time. By the way, if you have questions on this comp or any other comp, let me know down in the comments below or go on into the Discord channel and message me there. We're going to go into the B tier comps this time. I'm just going to go over if anything's like really changed with these comps rather than go into an in-depth guide for them, because this is a B patch update, so I did explain a lot of these in the previous video, but I'll do a rundown right now for people who have kept up from the past and just want to know if anything crazy has happened. Kayle reroll, nothing's really changed here. You just need a lot of econ to make this work. There are other options for tank frontline. It doesn't have to be Juggernauts, but I think it's the easiest one to play just because they are the cheapest. But yeah, it just revolves around 3-star Kayle with Rage Blade. The other 2 items, they matter. Like, you definitely want Jeweled Gauntlet, but they're not like the most important thing in the world. The most important thing in the world is getting 3-star Kayle without rolling too much and then having the econ to go level 9. After that, we have is Mentor Executioners. This comp did get nerfed a bunch. It's still solid, but it's just not as like stable. Like, remember before when you played this comp, you hit the 4 Mentor board with a 1-star Ryze and you put all your items that you built in the early game that you saved for him, and then he would just Giga Smurf and like just super stabilize you. Doesn't happen as much anymore, but obviously the comp is still playable. Just know that it doesn't like super win out like it did in the past, especially once you get like Yone and Lee Sin and stuff. Like before, that kind of solidified the win for sure. Now it like solidifies it maybe. I guess that's not really a term, but that's how it is. Next one up we have is Jinx and Volibear flex. Decent comp, nothing too crazy going on here. It's good with Tiny Team. You just drop down to 3 Star Guardian. It's like an alternative Tiny Team comp, but Star Guardians and Luchadors for some reason just share like every single trait. Edgelord, Sniper, Heavyweight, and Bastion. I guess Heavyweight isn't shared. For some reason, Luchadors don't have a Heavyweight, don't ask me why, but they share 3 other traits, which is pretty nice, right? But it's pretty much just a Jinx carry build, and it's just one way to kind of play it out if you get these champions randomly early on. In the B tier, you tend to not play these comps too much just because there are better versions of them out there. But if you hit the units, you hit the units, so you just play them. Next one up we have is Fan Service, Xayah, and Rakan. I actually want to do a quick little data check on this. Let's go to stats and then champions. We'll go to 2 cost by typing 2 there and then sort by 3-star average placement. They went from, wow, they're 4.23 now. Holy cow. Last patch, what do you think they were? They were 3.94 and 3.8, so they got remarkably worse. The play rate is also down a bunch on like the 3-star rate, so yeah, definitely seen better days. Is it still playable? If you get it for free, yes. You know how some games you just get 2-star Xayah right away and you didn't even have to roll, and for some reason you also have a Rage Blade? That's going to kind of be the times where you play this comp. Or you get like Worth the Wait 2 or Exalted Adventure and you get one of these units and then you're like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Next build up we have is Juggernaut Ashe. Just play Colossal Ashe instead. Protector Kog'Maw. If you get early Kog'Maw, definitely possible to play. You could do this or Smolder depending on what items you have. Definitely still viable. You could play it with other tank frontlines such as Heavyweights or even Juggernauts. We could do a little data check on that too. Go to the Explorer tool, type in Smolder, and then you go to, well, let's get rid of these ones. And then you go on over to traits, type in 6, and then you'll see all the 6 traits, and you'll see that people are going to be doing like a bunch of different ones, but like, yeah, Heavyweight's probably going to be the most popular right now. After that, it's going to be the same with the Smolder build, but we'll get to that in just a bit. Sniper Varus, this is just another variation of Varus. The Fast 9 version, probably a bit better than this. Caps out a bit higher, but this is a budget comp that you could kind of use to go into it because it does run, I believe, a couple of cheaper units. Jhin reroll, just do the crew reroll instead. Gangplank Mentors, better stuff to play. Wraith, if you get Wraith emblem, definitely you can go for 6 Wraith. It's good with Kayle reroll also, if you ever get that. Protector Smolder, same thing. You could use all sorts of different front lines with this. Oh, I just realized we typed in Smolder before, but we could type in Kog'Maw as well. Type in the 6. Kog'Maw wants the Protectors. Smolder wants the Heavyweights. Next build up we have is going to be Sorcerers. Honestly, I think this comp is a bit underrated right now. The only issue is that people are taking your karmas because they're playing it in Mighty Mech. So even though Sorcerer still is good, there's just a better version of it out there. Battle Academia Katarina. Yeah, I mean, Katarina's just seen better days. Like, she will come back. I'd say if you have like Radiant items, this comp is viable, but if you don't, then yeah, probably not viable. And by Radiant, I mean Radiant Hand of Justice. That's the best one on her by far. Luchador Volibear. Ever since the Luchador nerfs, I don't really like this comp that much. You can play it still. Again, if you get it for free, you get it for free, but I wouldn't like gun for it from the start. Malzahar Heavyweights. This comp got nerfed really, really hard. If we go back to the data checking, go to champions, type in 3 costs, sort by 3-star average placement. Where is Malzahar? Malzahar's, oh my god, at the bottom. A 3-star, 3 cost, averaging a 4.02 is absolutely atrocious. Like, yeah, they nerfed it maybe a little too hard. I don't know how they're going to bring it back, but yeah, that's going to be a Xayah, trash. Like, we could check her out again over here. She's towards the bottom. Like, if you get a 3-star Xayah, you're averaging 4.47. No, thank you. Katarina's even worse. Like, yeah, there's like a lot of bad stuff out here. So probably want to avoid some of these comps. But obviously, there's a spot for everything, even if something's averaging like a 6.0. There are still spots for them, and you could always just use something temporarily. But for the most part, like, just stick with the A and S tiers because they're just going to be the most reliable. But that's kind of my rundown for the patch. If you have any questions, again, let me know down in the comments or in the Discord. Links will be in the description. And if you want more details on every single one of these comps, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. And you could check out the other stuff on the website as well, such as like recommended artifact items. I have a bunch of guides you could click on, patch review. I'm zoomed in right now, so like it looks a bit weird, but it looks better when you look at the website with like normal resolution. But yeah, like try to play as much Mighty Mech as possible. Duelist Ashe and Colossal Udyr, probably a really good solid secondary if you ever get a Rageblade start. And then yeah, if you get a Viego spot, go for it because it is going to be good. And if you get Gnar with Golden Edge, go for Fast 9 Bears. That's going to be the too long didn't watch of the patch. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.